writ large, our democracy right now is absolutely dysfunctional. It's a disgrace. And I say that of both, I mean, both parties are not making it happen, folks. There's nothing permanent about the United States of America except in everybody's head. We are an experiment. We are still an experiment. And when Ben Franklin walked down the steps of Constitution Hall after they worked late into the night to write our Constitution, after months of labor through the summer, a woman shouted at him and said, "Tell us, Dr. Franklin, what do we have? A monarchy or a republic?" And he said back to her, he shouted back to her, "A republic, if you can keep it." That's what he said, if you can keep it. The youth vote was a 55% increase. And we had more Americans vote than at any time in American history, 113 million. First time we've ever been over 100 million. But guess what? The youth vote was still at 55% increase, only 32 or 3%. What is that about? And the overall vote was 49%. That is simply unacceptable. And I was recently in China a few weeks ago. I was in Europe a few weeks ago, talking to the leaders in various places. We're very suspect right now. Leaders won't say that to Trump, and if somebody in the administration, they'll probably say, "Oh, Kerry's trying to undermine us by saying that we're suspect." Well, I'm just telling you the truth. 195 nations are fighting to keep Paris alive. And you know what? 38 governors in America, 38 states in our nation have passed renewable portfolio laws. That's the equivalent of 80% of the population of our nation. More than 1,000 mayors are committed to continue in the cities, every major city in America, to make sure we do our best to meet the Paris Agreement. So I can sit here with confidence tonight and say to you that Donald Trump may have pulled out of Paris, but the American people and the vast majority of our government has not pulled out of it, and we're going to try to do our best to live up to it. When you have a bad economy or a scary economy, and you have demagogues taking advantage of the fear and particularly starting to target people for religious or ethnic or racial reasons, you have what happened in Europe in 1939, folks. And it's ugly. And we're seeing shades of that arising again in various places. People being scapegoated by race, by religion, otherwise, and them and us. That is antithetical to everything we are as Americans, and we cannot fall prey to that. We can't become the prisoners of it. I said I'm not going to eliminate. I'm not taking anything off the table, but I'm not sitting around. I haven't been running around to the most obvious states, laying any groundwork or doing anything. Am I going to think about it? Yeah, I'm going to think about it. I've said that point blank simply because of all the things I've just talked about. If you care about these things, you have to think about it. But I would love it. I mean, I'm the guy who picked Barack Obama to give the keynote at my convention. And I kind of thought it would be great if he renominated me 4 years later. But it obviously worked out differently. I had no anticipation that I would be working for him a few years later. These are tricky, difficult issues. But I want you to know that the President of the United States demanded the highest standards from the Joint Chiefs, from every branch of the military, and from all of our intelligence agencies before anybody was allowed to take any life. And I think the United States is unique in the level of standards that we did apply. There are problems with China's approach to how our companies are allowed to do business. And the transfer of technology required in certain relationships, the lack of market access. I mean, you know the litany. So it's legitimate for us to go after those. The way I would have done it is not to just slap the tariffs on and start the tit for tat, which is not going anywhere good, I would have started it by saying, okay, we got TPP in place. That's kind of interesting. China doesn't like that very much. Why don't we work with the TPP folks? Let's kind of use that as a fulcrum, fixing it in the way that we want to fix it. By the way, 3/4 of the Canada-Mexico agreement is straight out of TPP. Not what he did, it's what we did. So we could have used that, but more importantly, get Japan on board, and then get Europe on board. Then you've got a trading bloc flows. Then you've got leverage. Then you say to China, we're all in agreement about this problem of doing business with you, and you're taking advantage of our economies. We need to work it out. To me, that's a genuine negotiation and the way to approach it. So I think that I'm hopeful, however. I will tell you from my conversations in China, I think there's a chance that the Argentina G20 might surprise, and we may be able to see an agreement to agree on something, and perhaps a movement in a different direction. In Iran, the hardliners, the IRGC, General Soleimani, the people who didn't want the negotiation to even take place, have been empowered. Because what's happened is the people who said, you can't trust America, you make a deal with them, they won't keep it, Donald Trump has now reinforced that. And so, in fact, the hardliners have been strengthened. And I got to tell you something, folks, if we haven't learned this by now, God knows when we will. We don't do regime change very well. That's what this policy is actually about. It's trying to economically squeeze Iran into complete submission so they'll come crying to the table, we capitulate. Not going to happen. It's not. Climate change is not something we don't have a solution to. It's not a lack of capacity, it's a lack of political will. And the solution to climate change is energy policy.